The sound wasn't a snap. It was a sickening crunch that echoed through the living room. My sister Victoria didn't stumble. She lifted her designer heel and brought it down again, grinding the grey plastic into the hardwood. It was the $200 Millennium Falcon Lego set I had worked 3 weeks of overtime to buy. She wasn't drunk. She was ice cold. He needs to learn that the world doesn't care about his toys, she said, smoothing her skirt. I'm teaching him disappointment. My 6-year-old son. Noah didn't cry. He pulled his knees to his chest and stopped breathing, trying to turn invisible. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. I just watched my son try to disappear. Drop a broken heart emoji in the comments if you've ever seen a child learn to be silent to survive. I want to know I'm not the only one. I expected horror. I expected someone to gasp, to rush over, to help me pick up the pieces. Instead, I got an ovation. My mother, Patricia, actually clapped her hands together, a sharp staccato sound that matched the rhythm of the breaking plastic. She laughed, that high, nervous titter she used to smooth over every crack in our family foundation. Oh, stop looking so tragic, Alice, she chirped, waving her wine glass. Victoria is right. Noah is too sensitive. Boys need to be tough. It's just plastic. For heaven's sake, just plastic. That plastic was 3 weeks of overtime. It was skipped lunches and late nights. It was my son's joy pulverized into grey shrapnel on the Persian rug. I am 29 years old. For 29 years I have been the side character in the Victoria show. I was the prop, the punching bag, the one expected to clean up the confetti after her parades, but staring at my mother's face, that desperate smiling mask she wore to pretend her eldest daughter wasn't a monster. I felt something inside me snap. It wasn't a loud snap like the Legos. It was quiet. It was the sound of a heavy steel door locking shut. The memory hit me hard, a physical ache. My chest, I was 12. Victoria had taken my diary, the one with the little brass lock, and read it aloud to her friends at a sleepover while I banged on the locked door, begging her to stop. When I went to my mother, sobbing, she didn't punish Victoria. She punished me. You're being too sensitive, Alice, she'd sighed. She's just having fun, don't be such a wet blanket. They broke my privacy then, and they told me my pain was an inconvenience. They taught me to swallow my anger so they wouldn't have to deal with the indigestion. But looking at Noah now, curled into a silent ball of misery, I realized the truth. They aren't confused, they aren't helpless, they are entertained. My pain is their fuel. My son's humiliation is just the price of admission for their twisted family bonding. They feast on our smallness to make themselves feel big. I didn't look at my mother, I looked at Victoria. She was smirking, swirling her wine, waiting for me to cry. She wanted the tears, she wanted the drama, she wanted me to scream so she could call me crazy and play the victim again. I took a step forward. My hands weren't shaking, my heart wasn't racing. I felt a cold, deadly calm wash over me. A clarity sharper than the shards of plastic on the floor. The old Alice, the one who apologized for taking up space, died the moment that heel came down. You think this is funny? I said. My voice was low, flat, devoid of the tremor she was expecting. You think destroying a 6-year-old is a lesson? Oh, lighten up. Victoria scoffed, leaning back against the sideboard with a casual arrogance that made my blood run cold. I did him a favor. Now he knows not to get attached to garbage. Unlike you hoarding your little pennies to buy junk, the room went silent, but it wasn't the silence of shame. It was the silence of anticipation. They were waiting for the next act. They were waiting for me to fold, but they didn't know I was done playing the game. I was ready to go to jail tonight if that's what it took. I was ready to burn the whole script. I took a breath, not to calm down but to steady my aim. I wasn't going to shout, I was going to dismantle them. A chair scraped against the floorboards. It was a harsh, ugly sound that sliced right through my mother's nervous laughter. The room didn't just go quiet, the air was sucked out of it. My father, Robert, stood up. For 20 years I have watched this man shrink. I have watched him fold himself into corners, making himself smaller so his wife and daughter could have more room to expand. But as he stood there, casting a shadow over the dining table, he didn't look small. He looked massive. He didn't look at me. He walked past my mother, who was already reaching out a hand to pat his arm to soothe the beast before it woke up. Robert, sit down. She hissed, her voice dipping into that frantic, managing tone she used when the neighbors were watching. You're making a scene. He walked right through her words like they were smoke. He stopped in front of the wreckage. He looked down at the shards of the Millennium Falcon, at the ruined instruction manual, at the grey debris field that used to be a gift. Then he raised his left hand. He stared at his ring finger. The gold band was tight, embedded deep into the flesh, a golden tourniquet he had worn for 40 years. He grabbed it with his right hand and twisted. It didn't want to come off. It was stuck, fused to him by decades of obligation and silence. He didn't use soap. He didn't try to be gentle. He yanked. I saw his skin turn white, then red. I saw him WSE as the metal scraped over the knuckle, tearing a layer of skin with it. but he didn't stop until it popped off. He held it up for a second, letting the light catch the inscription inside, a promise he had kept while they broke every single one of theirs. Then he opened his hand. He didn't place it gently. He threw it. It hit the pile of broken Legos with a heavy final thud. The sound was louder than the smashing had been. It was the sound of a structural column snapping. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Victoria actually took a step back, her smirk faltering for the first time. Dad looked at them. He didn't scream, he didn't rage. His voice was a low, growly whisper that terrified me more than any shout ever could. I am done paying. My mother did what she always does when reality tries to break through the windows. She tried to clean it up. She didn't look at the rings sitting in the debris. She didn't look at my father's shaking hand. She dropped to her knees and started scooping up the jagged plastic shards, her movements frantic and jerky like a wind-up toy overwhelmed. "Oh, Robert, stop being so dramatic." She laughed, but the sound was thin like glass cracking. "You're having a spell. Is it your blood sugar? Did you take your pills?" "Victoria, help me pick this up. Your father is just tired. He doesn't mean it." She was rewriting the scene in real time, in her version. Dad was just a confused old man, having a senior moment, and we would all chuckle about it over dessert. She was trying to pull the rug back over the corpse, but Dad didn't sit down. He didn't apologize. He didn't even look at her. He turned his back on them. He walked out of the dining room, his heavy boots thurring against the floorboards with a rhythm I hadn't heard in years. He walked straight to the hallway closet, the one where we kept the vacuum and the winter coats. "Robert," Mom called out, her voice pitching up an octave. "Where are you going? We haven't had cake." I watched him. I was frozen, my arm still shielding Noah, but my eyes were glued to my father. For my entire life I thought I knew exactly who Robert was. He was the furniture, he was the wallet. He was the man who sighed and opened his checkbook to make the screaming stop. I thought he was a coward. I thought he stayed silent because he was weak, because he was afraid of my mother's guilt trips and my sister's tantrums. I was wrong. He opened the closet door. He knelt down, pushing aside the old coats that smelled like mothballs and dust. He reached into the back behind the shoe rack and pulled out his old red metal toolbox. It clanked loudly. Victoria rolled her eyes, inspecting her nails. "Great, now he's going to fix the sink." "Can we leave, Mom? This is boring." Dad didn't take out a wrench. He didn't take out a hammer. He reached into the bottom compartment of the box and pulled out a book. It was a black leather ledger. It was battered, the corners worn down to the grey cardboard beneath. The spine creased from years of opening and closing. It looked like something from another century. He stood up, brushing the dust off the cover. He walked back into the dining room. The atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, charged with static. He wasn't holding a tool, he was holding a weapon. He walked to the table. He pushed aside the crystal vase of flowers my mother had arranged so perfectly. He set the book down. Thump. It was a heavy sound, a sound of finality. I stared at the book. I had never seen it before, not once in 29 years. And suddenly the realization hit me so hard I almost lost my breath. He hadn't been ignoring them. He hadn't been sleeping. He hadn't been oblivious to the theft, the insults, the cruelty. He had been watching. He had been documenting. He wasn't a coward. He was a spy in his own house, and the investigation was finally over. He opened the cover. The pages weren't filled with scribbles or random notes. They were filled with columns, neat, precise, terrifying columns written in red ink. It was the handwriting of a man who had spent 40 years measuring structural integrity, looking for the hairline fractures that bring buildings down. "What is this?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling slightly. "A diary. That is pathetic. It is an audit," Dad said. He didn't look up. He ran a calloused finger down the first page. "For years you have told everyone you are a self-made woman. You have told everyone that Alice is the charity case, that Alice is the one who needs help, but math doesn't lie, Victoria, and neither do bank transfers." He looked up then, his eyes locking onto my mother. "August 12th, 2019, $15,000. My mother went pale. "Robert, don't." $15,000 wire transferred to the law firm of Stevenson and Hart, he continued, his voice steady as a metronome. "Legal fees to bury Victoria's DUI so she wouldn't have a criminal record." The room spun. I remembered August 2019. I was graduating from my master's program. I had walked across the stage alone because my parents called me the night before crying, saying they couldn't afford the flight due to unexpected home repairs. I sat in my dorm room that night eating instant noodles in my cap and gown, feeling selfish for even asking them to come. I believed them. I thought they were struggling. They weren't struggling, they were buying my sister's freedom. The financial cost was $15,000, Dad said, reading from the margin notes, the emotional cost. Alice graduated alone. We told her we were broke. We lied to the good daughter to save the criminal one. I looked at my mother. She couldn't meet my eyes. The shame radiating off her was palpable, but I didn't feel pity. I felt a cold, hard knot of validation tightening in my stomach. I wasn't unloved, I was just underfunded. Dad turned the page. The sound was sharp in the silent room. March 3rd, 2021. $40,000, Victoria gasped. That was an investment, my skincare line. There was a pyramid scheme. Dad cut her off. You needed $40,000 to buy inventory you never sold. You told us it was a bridge loan until your investors came through. There were no investors, just me. He looked at Noah, who was still hiding behind my leg. That was the same week Noah needed braces. Alice asked for a loan. I told her no. I told her we were tight. We weren't tight. We were pouring $40,000 into a garage full of expired face cream that is still sitting in your mother's basement. I looked down at my son. I remembered telling him we had to wait on the braces. I remembered feeling like a failure of a mother because I couldn't provide for him. While Victoria posted photos of her business trips to Cabo, it wasn't just money. It was theft. They had stolen my graduation. They had stolen my son's dental care. They had stolen my peace of mind and handed it to Victoria to burn. Dad flipped through the rest of the pages, the paper rustling like dry leaves, speeding tickets, rent for apartments you got evicted from, loans for cars you crashed. It is all here, dates, times, receipt numbers. He slammed the book shut. Dust motes danced in the air. I added it up this morning, he said. Total financial cost $285,000. The number hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. $285,000, that was a house, that was a retirement, that was a life. You aren't rich, Victoria, Dad said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. You are a pauper in a Gucci belt, you are a parasite. And the total emotional cost, the cost of keeping your secrets, the cost of cleaning up your messes so you could pretend to be perfect. He looked at me and for the first time his eyes softened. They were wet. The cost was my daughter's love, and that price is too high. I am not paying it anymore. Victoria didn't cry. She laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous bark of a sound, the kind of noise a queen makes when a peasant tries to give her an order. She shook her head, her hair perfectly tossing over her shoulder, and looked at my father with a mixture of pity and amusement. You think I care about your little notebook, Dad? She scoffed, reaching into her purse. You think I care about your math? I have my own money, I have the joint savings account, and you know what, since you want to play accountant, I think I'll just take my share right now. Before you go completely senile, she pulled out her phone. The screen lit up her face, highlighting the smirk that had terrorized me for decades. My stomach dropped. The joint savings, that account, held the money from the sale of my grandparents' farm. It was Dad's retirement, it was the emergency fund. If she transferred that money out, it would be gone. She would hide it in some offshore crypto wallet or invest it in another fake business, and Dad would be left with nothing but his ledger. Dad, stop her, I whispered, stepping forward. She's going to wipe you out. Dad didn't move. He didn't shout or reach for the phone. He simply leaned back, crossed his arms, and watched her. Try it, he said. Victoria scoffed and started tapping. Fine, I'm transferring 50 grand. Severance pay for surviving this family. She waited. I held my breath. Her smirk faded. She tapped again, harder. The Wi-Fi here is trash, she muttered. It's not the Wi-Fi, Dad said. A sharp beep sounded. Victoria's face drained instantly. She turned the phone toward us. Declined, account frozen, contact fraud department. What did you do? She whispered. I did it 10 minutes ago. Dad said calmly, when you stomped on my grandson's toy and laughed. He stepped forward. I called the bank. Every account tied to your name is frozen. Mine, your mother's, the joint savings, the business line, all flagged under elder abuse fraud. They're doing a forensic review. That's my money too, she cried. The phone slipped from her hand. For the first time she wasn't powerful. Without the money she was nothing. You're broke, Victoria, Dad said, and the bank will have questions. Get out, he added. Now my mother grabbed her purse and fled with her. I exhaled for the first time in decades. It was over. Then Victoria stopped at the door. She turned back, eyes wild. This is my inheritance. You earn nothing, Dad shouted. She grabbed a heavy ceramic vase and hurled it through the bay window. Crash, glass exploded everywhere. A shard cut my cheek. Noah screamed. Victoria stood in the wreckage, satisfied. She turned eviction into spectacle. My mother didn't check on Noah. She didn't look at my bleeding face. She dropped to her knees and started sweeping glass with her bare hands. It's fine, she babbled. We can fix this. Don't call the police. Blood ran down her arms. That's when I understood. She wasn't a victim. She was the cleanup crew. I pulled her hands up to her face. You're bleeding for her. She froze. You taught me that love means bleeding so Victoria doesn't have to. I said, I won't do it anymore, and my son won't watch you do it either. Sirens wailed outside. Dad had already called. 6 months later, our new apartment was small, scratched, and peaceful. Dad knelt beside Noah, teaching him to cut wood for a picture frame. Measure twice, Dad said gently. Strong frames keep art safe. Noah knocked over a glass of milk. It shattered. I froze, but Dad laughed. Gravity wins again. Grabbed the towels. Noah giggled. He wasn't afraid. We lost a lot. Family illusions, the old structure, but watching my son clean a spill without fear, I knew the cost was worth it. We broke the cycle. And in its place we found peace. If you've ever had to cut off family to save your peace, type freedom in the. If you enjoyed the story, hit like and subscribe for more story. Share this story. You are not alone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.